we want to move now to our robot overlords and their future. That is the world of AI and what it is bringing to us. Perhaps not that great economic news, but we shall see. And to learn more about all of this, we are very, very honored, as always, to be joined by Michael Roberts, the socialist economist, author of many great books, and writer of the blog, The Next Recession. Michael, thanks so much for being back with us.
Thank you, Eugene. It's great to be with you again. Yes, I'm thinking about those robot overlords, so we can probably discuss that in some detail.
Indeed, yes, I hope so. And maybe we won't make it to that because the AI bubble will burst, which is where I want to start here. We have a graphic. I don't know if you'll be able to see this graphic, but it's essentially to explain it. It's everything that's being cycled around financially with NVIDIA right at the center there, but how you have just so many things going on here and this trillions of dollars through 10 or 12 companies. So give us a sense of what is the size of this AI bubble and why is it inflating so much?
Well, the bubble itself is to do with the investors piling in the stock market to buy all the companies you've got on that diagram. They're hoping that OpenAI, NVIDIA, all the other companies there, Intel, all the rest are going to dramatically increase the productivity of the US economy and bring huge profits to these companies. And so let's pile in and buy their shares now and keep on buying them until that happens. And at the same time, what we're finding is that these companies are spending huge amounts of money on investment in data centers and other infrastructure projects in order to, as it were, drive forward the artificial intelligence methods and the new models that they keep bringing out on regular occasions. So this is the massive boom that is driving the US economy, Eugene. If there hadn't been the spending that these companies have been making to build these centers and infrastructure, there'd be no growth in the US economy this year. Economists have taken out the investment that's been made, some 450 billion since in the last 3 years by these companies. If you take that out of the GDP, there's been no growth this year. That shows you how everything, the US economy now is one single bet on whether the AI is going to deliver higher productivity and therefore improve the standards of living for the American people. That is the bet. Is it a bet that's going to happen? I don't think so, because there's a massive investment that's taken place in the stock market, which is way over the top. That's what we mean by a bubble. It's just out of the level of what's actually going on in the real economy, because the rest of the US economy is not doing very well at all. Employment is falling, unemployment is rising, inflation is still with us. Lots of companies are finding it difficult to make any sort of profit at all. We've got young people who can't get work. There's a general increase in the price of goods in particular. Also, a huge increase in electricity prices, which is partly due to the AI companies massively increasing these data centers, which require huge amounts of water, huge amounts of electricity, and that's driving up electricity prices. So everything is depending on this delivering, these AI companies delivering productivity over the next few years. Otherwise, the whole thing is just going to crash.
No, I think that's such a good point. And because of the government shutdown, they did not release the CPI numbers so far for this month, which I think might be a blessing in disguise, because last month there was a 6.2 year-on-year increase percent-wise on electricity costs. So that might be even worse. And I think the point you're making here is so important, because how fragile the economy is. Like, I was looking the other day that at some statistics from the US government saying that there's $23 trillion in quote unquote runnables, or assets that are liabilities that are, subject to a metaphorical bank run, equivalent of 80% of the GDP. And these numbers were from the Federal Reserve. And the thing that blew me away is that they were saying that's not a big deal. They were like, oh yeah, $23 trillion, 80% of the GDP, but everything seems basically fine. But when you really start to look into this, a couple bad bets and a couple bad companies here and there could bring the whole thing down.
Yes, and one of the things that graph you show, where everybody's these AI companies are all connected, they're all buying each other's, making contracts with each other, borrowing money from each other. So it's like a game of musical chairs, and they're all moving around these chairs And if one of them slips up, possibly OpenAI, possibly NVIDIA, if they start slipping up and that share is no longer available, we could start to see an implosion of this process of expansion, which has just got incredibly out of control. Now, maybe it'll work. Maybe after a big slump in the US economy, maybe after a few 100,000 or millions of American workers lose their jobs for a while, maybe the situation, whoever survives after that might be able to make some profit and regrow the economy. But do we want to go through that? Why should we have to go through this crash in order to achieve, as it were, the winners in this AI struggle which is going on at the moment? Because it's not just competition between the different AI companies or the desire to win. There's also got competition from abroad. There's lots of other AI operations going on in other countries, in China and France, which are cheaper, which are competing against these big companies in America. And they could very well undermine the process of gains that the AI companies makes. So it is a fragile situation. And viewers should be aware that over the next year or so, possibly earlier, we're going to see a different situation from this huge boom that we're seeing in the stock market now. And that could have repercussions for all of us, whether we've got jobs and living standards over the next year.
I mean, I think that's a great point. And I wonder if you think that to some degree this is behind the Federal Reserve policy in a way, because you pointed out in a recent piece that you did on the AI bubble that, there's sort of, and what I mean by the Federal Reserve policy, that they're sort of managing a controlled decline. Because as you pointed out, well, youth unemployment is rising, jobs that are exposed to AI, they're actually laying people off. Like, it's not a full-on collapse, but it is sort of a slow shedding around the economy. And it feels like a lot of what they're trying to do at the Fed is sort of say, well, we can't prevent the thing from going down, but maybe we can slow the rate of the fall.
Yeah, I think so. And then there's quite a lot of warning going on amongst the Fed, amongst the International Monetary Fund and other organizations saying, look, this is a tricky situation. It's getting out of hand, and there needs to be some moderation in the hyper frenzy that's going on in buying the stock market and all the assets of these companies at the moment. This is way over the top, and it could lead to a serious downturn in the opposite direction, which could have damaged everybody's future over the next year. And that's the issue before. So I don't think the Fed can do much about it. They're reluctant to cut interest rates to try and make it a bit easier. But what would happen if they did cut interest rates is that would just make borrowing cheaper. So investors into the stock market would just borrow more and keep piling into these stocks. And so there'll be even more of an uncontrollable bubble that could develop. And as you say, that what's eventually going to decide this, actually, in my view, is whether AI actually manages to get rid of enough human labor, enough workers from the system, and replace it with these machine learning processes, which enable companies to do without a lot of labor. Then they can start to make a profit, but that will be at the expense of millions of workers. And that's the prospect that would happen if this is going to succeed. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, we could well have a financial crash.
The point you were making about cutting interest rates and things piling into the stock market, given the gentleman you have behind you, it reminds me of that quote from Marx in the Manifesto. So it's like the sorcerer who's no longer able to contain the spells he has conjured up from the netherworld. I mean, that really does seem to describe where we are with the economy. And I think it goes to a point you were making is, why do we have to go through this process of, some have called it creative destruction, I don't know how creative it is, of boom and bust and all these things. I mean, it seems to speak to the total just the bankruptcy of the capitalist system at this point in time, that the only way to allocate resources is just through random casino gambling rather than what people actually need to survive and thrive.
If we were thinking about it logically, the government would try to plan the use of these new technologies in order to retrain people to use them, and also to bring them gradually into the system so that they can make gains, instead of it just being left to the complete anarchic process of companies signing contracts with each other, buying each other's shares, people piling in and hoping that this will. We've had this happen before. You talk about creative destruction. We've had it before in the history of capitalism. The railway boom in the 19th century was a massive bubble which launched away, and in the end, loads of companies crashed as a result of that. People lost their jobs, Eventually, of course, we still got the railways, but only through this process of destruction followed by the creation of this new technology. Do we really want to do that? Do we really want to see millions of American workers lose their jobs? Do we really want to see huge amounts of losses in people's living standards? Do we really want to see rising prices in energy and in water and elsewhere as a result of this maniacal approach which is being adopted to introduce this technology, assuming it works? I mean, we still don't know whether it will actually produce any greater improvement in the economies of the world by removing a lot of human labor and replacing it with machines that just learn and regurgitate everything that we've got and make it quicker, maybe. Will it work? Well, still remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm. Well, and let me ask you just one final question here before I let you go, because especially for those who watch late night TV here in the United States, there's many commercials about buying gold. If you're on social media, everything is get Bitcoin. And it's sort of being pitched to people as like, hey, we don't know what's going on with the world. Things could go good, things could go bad, but these are highly valued assets and you should spend your money on those because that's how you protect your money against a potential collapse in the stock market.
Well, I think that's what we're seeing. Gold price in US dollars, about $4,200 per gold ounce at the moment, which is an unbelievably historically high record. It shows that people are concerned, the investors anyway, people who've got money to invest, are looking to keep out of dollars, keep out of currencies, keep out of other things. But it's part of the same bubble. The stock market is shooting up. Bitcoin prices have been shooting up. It's interesting that when President Trump said that he was going to put the tariffs up on Chinese imports again because the Chinese have been nasty about rare earth minerals. That produced a collapse in the market, but not in gold. Stock market went down, Bitcoin went down heavily, but gold stayed up because gold is seen as some sort of safe asset. That gold in your hand is going to be some sort of safe asset which you can use to protect your assets if it's not in dollars or in any other currency. And so gold seems to be this hedge which people turn to when there's uncertainty in the market. So I suspect that over the next 6 months, we could have a big crash in the stock market. We could have a crash in the Bitcoin sector, but not gold, because gold will be seen as a place to run to in such a situation.
偷偷告诉大家，我最近发现了新法宝 Royal Face 逆时奇迹系列，它有活肤露、全效精华，还有精华霜。尤其我皮肤比较偏干，所以我非常的注重保湿。保湿做得好，肌肤自然烹润。提亮肤色更年轻，抚平皱纹超有感，而且气色变好。用心保养，每天都更美一点。美吧。